All right, in this episode, we're gonna talk about two of our main cameras that we use, the Nikon D7000 and the Nikon D7200. So these are two Nikon DSLRs that we use to make a lot of our videos. Now, how did we end up with these cameras? Well, I actually owned the Nikon D7000 before I even started Bite Sight. I bought it as my first DSLR that could shoot 1080p, 24 frames a second video. And the reason I got a Nikon actually is because my family all had Nikon gear. They had Nikon lenses, they had Nikon, equipment, all this stuff. So that's why I ended up with a Nikon. And then when I started the business, I started using that as the main camera. And then a couple years later, when I had to do a 2-camera interview shoot, I ended up buying its successor, which is the Nikon D7200. Okay, so what do we use these cameras for? These are our main cameras actually that we use for almost every one of our shoots. We use them for interviews, we use them for run and gun documentary style, event coverage, we use them for B-roll. We use these cameras quite a bit for everything. They're very versatile cameras. Most of our shoots where we don't have full control over everything, these cameras suit those needs perfectly. Now, when it comes to our setup of these cameras, there's actually a lot of setups that we use. When it goes run and gun, we are usually putting these cameras just on a fluid head tripod. Sometimes we go handheld with them, even though the stabilization is non-existent in these cameras. Another thing we do sometimes is that we throw these cameras onto a fly cam, which is basically a cheap glide cam, and that gives us a little bit more run and gun freedom with that. We usually pair these with our Nikon lenses, so we have a Sigma 30mm f1.4. We also have two Nikkor lenses, or they're kit lenses basically, so 18 to 200 I think 3.5 to 5.6, and we also have a Nikkor 18mm to 140mm, I think roughly f3.5 to 5.6 as well. Now these cameras also have a mic in, so usually we run audio out of our Zoom recorder into these cameras for two reasons. One, we use that as a backup, so we're recording to the Zoom and these cameras. And the other reason we do that is just in case, we have a quick turnaround and really the audio that comes out of the camera is good enough, we use that straight out of the camera. All right, so some of the things that we like about this camera. The first thing is the picture quality is still really good. It's not incredible, and definitely cell phones today rival these DSLRs, but the picture quality is still really good, and especially when you pair that with a really good lens. So when we're shooting on these cameras with our Sigma f1.4 30mm lens, I still get clients who ask me, wow, what resolution are you shooting at? And I mean, we are shooting in HD, it's just the camera lens and this camera produce very, very good quality results. So the picture quality is really, really good. Now it doesn't have the best codec and it doesn't have the best bit rates or even the best dynamic range when you compare it to other dedicated cinema cameras. But because of that, you actually have very manageable file sizes. The video that we shoot on these cameras, the files are actually very manageable, very low. You can edit them on not the most powerful computers, so that makes them really, really good. So dealing with the file size is another plus for these cameras. Another benefit you get from this, low bitrate codec is you can deal with cheaper SD cards, When you buy Blackmagic cameras or you buy these higher end cameras, they're always looking for, UHS-1 or UHS-2 speed SD cards, which cost a lot of money, or worse, CFast cards, which cost a crazy amount of money. With these Nikon DSLRs, you can buy a class 10 SD card, like 64 gig for $10, $20, and you'll be good. You'll be good to go. So SD cards are really cheap, which is definitely a plus. They both have dual SD card slots, so you can have, two SD cards in there, so lots of room to record, which is really, really nice. Another advantage of these Nikon DSLRs is they're in the higher range Nikon DSLRs, so they have more physical controls. One of the really nice things about these DSLRs is they have two dials. So they have a front dial and a back dial. So you can control your shutter speed, you can control your iris with two physical dials. There's also a lot of physical things for white balance, for ISO, a lot of these things. So when it comes to other cameras like Blackmagic that don't have a lot of physical controls, having these physical controls is a very good thing. One specific thing that's really nice about the Nikon D7200 is from the D7000, they did add 60 frames per second, and 60 frames per second is still some pretty decent slow-mo. I know there are better cameras out there that offer 90, 120, some of the Sonys offer 240 frames a second, but 60 frames a second still is a pretty nice slow-mo, so that's really good. Nikon D7200, that was a nice addition to have that. Another thing I really like about these cameras is their out-of-the-box picture. When I shoot on these cameras, even for my personal use, again, when it's paired with a nice lens and natural lighting, I'm actually surprised at how good the picture is out of the box. Without any color correction or color grading, you can get some really, really nice pictures out of these. The battery life is decent. I mean, not amazing, but again, I can generally get through a shooting day with maybe 2 or 3 batteries when doing B-roll. And even when we're doing interviews, you know, getting through with about 4 or 5 batteries is not too bad. So not GH4 or C100 level battery, but still pretty decent battery. And the last thing I'll mention when it comes to things that we like on these cameras, and this cannot be overstated, these cameras in 8 years have not once let me down. I have never lost a recording. I have never had a glitchy video. I've never had drop frames. I've had nothing go wrong with these cameras, which is really, really incredible. So we've been using these, again, these are our workhorse cameras over and over again, and they're still working great. They have not let me down once. All right, let's talk about some things that we don't like about this camera. Now, these are DSLRs, and if we're talking about DSLRs that do video, these are probably in the older school style of DSLRs in the sense that they don't have a lot of videography tools, right? So they don't have things like peaking or false color. They don't have things like being able to adjust the audio while you're recording, things like that, you know, dedicated cinema or video cameras have. So it's definitely missing some of those things. Another thing I really don't like about these cameras is they don't have any kind of stabilization, and you notice it. When you're, you know, hand holding a DSLR camera of this body size, you definitely see the shakes. Very jittery video. Now, yes, you can put this on a stabilizer, you know, some of the new age gimbals or even a glide cam or fly cam, but you know what, sometimes you don't have, you know, half an hour to balance these things, so you're just going handheld, and you definitely notice some jitter. Some of the newer cameras like the GH5 have in-body stabilization, so you know, these cameras do not have that, which is not a great thing. One thing that's really not good about the D7000 when it comes to video is it does not have a headphone jack, so you can't monitor audio at all on it. And in fact, that was one of the first reasons I bought the Zoom H4n, is because I couldn't monitor audio on the D7000. Now this has been remedied in the D7200. The 7200 did add a headphone jack, but if you're looking to buy the D7000, no headphone jack is something you definitely want to look out for. Okay, one of the most annoying things actually about these cameras is that you have to jump into live view when you want to record a video. Now when you jump into live view, at that point, your iris control is disabled. You can't adjust the iris while you're in live view. So if you're going to be recording video, you have to get really used to this routine of switch out of live view, adjust the iris, switch live view on. Oh, not good? Switch live view off, adjust the iris, switch live view back on. So that's kind of really annoying. And this is also evident when it comes to lenses that are not fully compatible with these cameras. So for example, the Sigma can't focus in live view. So we have to switch out of live view, hit autofocus, and switch back into live view. So live view disables a lot of your full controls, which is really annoying when you're doing quick run and gun shooting, or even when you're in a controlled environment. That's still an annoying feature. All right, and just some last minute notes about these cameras. These are not things that necessarily we like or we don't like, but they're definitely things that you should know about these cameras. The first thing is these cameras do not do 4K. Now the successor to these cameras, the D7500, does do 4K, but the 7000 and the 7200 do not do 4K. Now that's not a big deal for us because we don't do 4K workflow. You'll find countless videos on YouTube that talk about 4K not being a big deal, and we've been working in corporate video for 5-6 years now, and it's true. 4K still really isn't that big a deal, especially when you have 1080p video that looks really crisp and nice. Another thing you guys should know is that color grading is not very flexible when it comes to these files. Again, the codec is not great, the dynamic range is not great, and so if you really want lots of flexibility in color grading and color correction, these cameras are probably not the ones for you. But remember what I said, out of the box, the picture does look really nice. So if you want some quick turnarounds with just some minor tweaks, these cameras are still really good. And then the last thing I'll mention is that on the side, I do use these cameras as photo cameras, and they are actually very excellent photo cameras. I've shot a couple weddings of these, you know, a couple vacations and stuff like that. You can get some really, really nice photos of that. But that's a whole nother story that you guys can research. Other YouTube videos talk about these cameras as photo cameras in a lot more detail than we do. All right, so that's it, the D7000, D7200. They're cameras that we bought a long time ago that we still use a lot. They're very good cameras, very reliable cameras. So if you're considering buying them, you could definitely make good videos with Nikons. Everybody wants Canons, everybody wants Blackmagics, everybody wants Reds, all that stuff. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but Nikon cameras, we've used them a lot and we are very happy with our results. All right, that's it. We'll see you guys in the next one.
Chilling.